G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. So today we are going to be talking about the trade period that did lately happen. Finished up a few days ago. It was crazy, the deadline day in those last 15 minutes. Plenty of play movements and also pick swaps. So today we're going to be going over every AFL club's haul and giving each team a grade. Now the proof is in the pudding. We do have to wait and see how these recruits and how these picks end up in next year or a couple of years time, but we can still give each team a grade with how much they paid for a specific player or what they did, what their club's circumstances is as well. Giving a grade now may or may not even age that well or reflect that well in a couple of years time. But at the end of trade periods, it still is talking points, so it's worth doing anyway, just to differentiate with how clubs went. So feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do go to enjoy today's video. And let's get into it. So as always, we start off with the Adelaide Crows, and coming into this trade period and heading into next year, I just feel like when looking at the Crows, they need more best 22 quality players. They need more and better competition for spots. And that's exactly what they have been able to do this trade period. Bringing across 𝐼𝐿𝐴 from Melbourne. A lot of Melbourne supporters not happy with him leaving, or disappointing he's leaving, because he's just a really hard-working player that does drive standards for sure. They gave him a pick 28, so a pretty good price for him. So he'll come in, pressure forward type, but also very accountable, and as just said, one that can definitely drive the standards at the football club. And they also brought across two GWS Giants players, 𝐼𝐿𝐴 𝐼𝐿𝐴 and James Peatling. Cumming's been a pretty good stalwart from the Giants. He's had a few injury problems though, especially this year, but he gives plenty of drive off half-back, can also play high up on the wing, so another best 22 quality player to come in and battle for some spots. There was players like Brodie Smith this year who were in and out of the side. He could wax alongside Mitchell Hinge very nicely this next year perhaps. And then James Peatling's really turned the corner in the past 12 months. Breakout year for GWS this year. Got a lot more game time when Stephen Coniglio was going down with injury and was a high centre bounce midfielder. Good insight, contested type, but also is able to impact forward to centre. He racks up tackles and contests possessions. So Adelaide's midfield is a bit sus this year. So another one that will come in and really try and push for a best 22 spot. And they paid a great price from him, only a future second rounder, but they got the Giants' future third and future fourth round selections in return. They did let 𝐓𝐿𝐴 go, but he is always rumoured the past few years to leave, and there just isn't really a home for him in the best side. Let's be real here, that's what we've seen the past few seasons. So given what Adelaide really needs to achieve to improve their list, just more competition for best 22 players, have brought across Neil Bullen, Cumming and Peatling for good prices. It's got to be an A grade. I felt the Crows have really smashed it this trade period. We now move on to the Brisbane Lions, the premiers for 2024, and as expected, they were pretty quiet with the trade period front of things. Only a few pick swaps they did participate in. They do have 𝐼𝐿𝐴, one of the top draft prospects this year, father-son, so they need the points to match those bids. And they've got also Sam Marshall. He's a Brisbane Lions Academy midfielder who's expected to go in the top 30. So they just simply did a number of pick swaps with a number of clubs to get the picks and the points, enough points, to match those bids. But they did let Harry Sharp go. He went across to the Melbourne Football Club, and that's understandable. A young midfielder that just isn't really able to get game time. He was one of the emergencies, to be fair, in the grand final side for Brisbane. He's got a great tank in aerobic capacity, so has plenty of upside with his future for the Ds. So just going to be giving the Lions a C+ grade here. Pretty understandable that they were going to have a pretty quiet trade period given they just recently won the flag, and they did do the pick swaps that will be enough to land 𝐼𝐿𝐴 and also Marshall. Cross now to the Carlton Football Club, and a side that, geez, they really got busy in this trade period. They kicked off with one of the first transactions, bringing across Nick Haynes from the GWS Giants, a free agent who was a fine player, of course, from the Giants. But looking at it from his form this year, starting to get past it a wee bit, so don't know how he's going to go at the Blues, to be honest. He just isn't in his all-Australian form like he was a few years ago, but hey, new environment, he could perhaps flourish. They just need some good intercepting plays behind the ball. Felt like watching the Blues this year, so Nick Haynes can definitely come in and look, with his experience, definitely could help off the field too. And out went Matt Kennedy and also 𝐼𝐿𝐴. Kennedy got plenty of rumours, or build-up of rumours, with him leaving the club, and it did eventually happen within the last 15 minutes. Went across to the Bulldogs. Spent plenty of times as the sub for the Blues the last few seasons or so it's a pretty understandable move. And Matt 𝐼𝐿𝐴 was most likely going to be delisted anyway if he wasn't going to be the steak knives in that West Coast deal. And geez, what a move it ended up being from the Blues. Could it make or break the future of their list. They've obtained pick 3, and how it started is they got pick 14 off the Hawks from trading away their future first and future second rounder. And with the currency they had of pick 14 getting from the Hawks and also pick 12 from the ladder position they ended up finishing in at 8th, they trade that to the Eagles to obtain pick 3. How about that, eh? You usually have to pay premium to get top 5 picks, and given how good the draft is going to be, this could be make or break for the Blues. They could pick up a generational play here. They're rumoured to take Finn O'Sullivan. It looks like one of the favourites. You definitely have to be excited if you are a Carlton supporter. Yes, they didn't get Dan Houston, but perhaps drafting a potential superstar with a top 5 pick could be the way for the Blues to really progress their list. So they don't have their future first or future second next year, Carlton. They've really got to nail this pick 3, but I love the boldness of it from the Blues. So going to be giving the Blues here a B grade. Really ballsy stuff from the Blues, and it's going to be really exciting to look at this trade, what they've ended up doing with the Eagles in a few years' time. Could it turn into a big difference maker for Carlton, this trade? Now across to Collingwood, and looking with the plays they did bring in. Craig McRae, the list management, they do want to be aggressive. They are going down the Geelong path of things. Instead of investing a whole heap in the draft, they are using their future picks and keep on using their high draft capital to just sink into plays in their prime. They brought across their big fish, Dan Houston, 2-time All-Australian, fantastic halfback flanker. He's one of the best kicks in the competition, rate him so well, and now he's going to get a lot more plaudits, I feel. Now he's at a massive club of Collingwood, a Victorian club. In my opinion, the price they paid for Dan Houston as well was very good. It was expected Houston was going to go for 2 first rounders, but they didn't even end up paying that. Yes, they did give up Joe Richards, a player that has, I think, really good potential, and also John Noble, but is he part of the future for the Pies? I don't really think so. And also giving up their pick 36 and their future first round selection, part of that 3-way deal with Port Adelaide and Gold Coast. But giving up that for one of the best halfback flankers in the competition, not bad at all. He is quality. And listening to Justin Leppich on a few interviews, they really do rate their youngsters, the under 21-year-olds, players like Giants and Harry Demeter, who had, I think, a bit of injury this year, and also Ed Allen. So within the inner sanctum, a lot of those youngsters are really well rated. And of course, the other player we can't forget about, they also landed Harry Perryman, very underrated player for GWS, similar to 𝐼𝐴𝐸, plenty of years at the Giants. He can play a variety of roles. He can tag in the midfield, but also rebound off halfback. Very good player overhead too. He's accountable, got good intercepting abilities, and fits really nicely, I think, or could fit really nicely in Collingwood's defensive system. One that for sure could really flourish the free agent under Craig McRae. Going to be giving the Pies an A grade. Yes, they are playing hardball, they're playing aggressive with their list, but it feels like, and the list management and the coach knows, they're in the now. They want to win another premiership. Bringing across one of the best halfback flankers in the comp, paying a pretty good price, and also Perryman, a player that could really boss it. Yeah, I think it's been some very good business from the Pies. Going to be giving them an A grade. We now move on to the Essendon Football Club, and a side that was very quiet in this trade period. Usually the Bombers are very busy, but it wasn't to be. They brought in absolutely no one and only went out Jake Stringer across to the Giants. It was off, it was on, the deal was on again, and then the deal was confirmed off. 20 minutes later, it was actually a done deal, so the journos couldn't get it right there, but to be fair, I think 𝐼𝐴𝐸 is absolutely bossed this trade period, so I can't blame him too much. But yeah, off he goes to the Giants. It was said, though, like a few weeks after the end of the home away season, Jake Stringer said he's played his last game for the club. So if we want to spin a positive light on it for the Bombers, at least it is a lot of money off their books. But geez, he kicked 40 goals this year for the Bombers, so how will their forward line shape up next year? They really need to get Jay Gresham firing up. 𝐼𝐴𝐸𝐿, they did do a few pick swaps, the Bombers, to get the points ready and available to land 𝐼𝐴𝐸𝐿. Yeah, geez, he's really shot up the draft rankings. He's looking like he could be bidded within the top 5 or the top 10. Really good small forward type. Yeah, just very quiet from the Bombers, a bit unusual. And given where they are at, they need to improve, they need change. Don't know how to feel about this, so I'm just going to be giving the Bombers a D grade here. I thought there was going to be a few players that could have acquired. They were rumoured to a number, but couldn't land anybody. So yeah, a bit of an underwhelming and quiet trade period for the Bombers. Going to be giving them a D. Across now to the Fremantle Dockers, and even though they only brought in just the one player, no one did go out. They did land a big one though. Shea Bolton, it finally was done, rumoured for the past few years to return home to WA, and the deal is sealed. Heading into this off-season, there was going to be plenty of limelight shone on the Fremantle Dockies, given they had 3 first-round selections. A lot was talked about for Logan McDonald, but re-signed. A lot is talked about still for Chad Warner, but with what they gave it for Shea Bolton, maybe they don't have the draft capital to acquire him, but it's a big get for the Dockies. You look at the young core they have, they don't need to invest in the draft as much as other clubs in the competition. They've got a solid young core, so bringing it across a player who, let's remember, yes, Shea Bolton can show inconsistencies, but when the Tigers made finals in 2022, he was an All-Australian and AFL a top 10 player in the comp and one of the most impactful. That's what the Dockers need, impact forward of centre. He could really revitalise that forward line. He can run through the midfield too, get plenty of clearance, really change a game off his own boot. It's an absolutely perfect get for the Dockers, given what they need. And in my opinion, it was a really good deal from both parties. They did give up picks 11, 10 and 18, but they at least upgraded that pick 18 to a pick 14 and also the Tigers' future third, which could be a pick in the 30s, given the Tigers are probably expected to be bottom 2 again next year. So, as I've just said, it is a great get for the Dockers. I'm going to be giving them an A grade because it is such an ideal target they have acquired in Shea Bolton. The next team to discuss is the Geelong Football Club, and similar to the Dockers, just one player coming to the side and no players leaving. But they've landed a big one here, the Cats. Bailey Smith, he was rumoured the past year or so to leave the Dogs, and eventually he settled across the Cats. And as expected, this deal did take until the final 5 minutes of the trade period. Finally done with the Bulldogs. And yeah, really good deal, I felt, for the Cats. Only paying a pick 17 to acquire a top talent in Bailey Smith, and also giving up a pick 38, which the Dogs did use to bring across Matt Kennedy. You can make your opinions on him. I still think he's a bit overrated, but he definitely can give a plenty of drive and run and strength and brute force in the midfield for the Cats. He had an outstanding 2021 finals campaign, and he's coming off an ACL, so he's starting now to get into his mid-20s range of his career. Could he really have a massive season and a big pre-season here for the Cats? It's an exciting pickup for Geelong. It's another year of trading out their top draft capital, but look at some of the youngsters the Cats have got across their list. Ollie Henry they acquired. Max Holmes, really good quality player. Now Bailey Smith, another one who's under 24. They were a kick away from the grand finals, so they've made a really good upgrade here, bringing across Baslenka. So I'm going to be giving the Cats a B+ here. Really good business to acquire Bailey Smith on, I feel, a good deal. Now moving on to the Gold Coast Suns, and it is another busy off-season from the side from Queensland. They had a lot of pick swaps and a lot of player movements. They brought in free agent 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 from the Crows, a key position player that can definitely help out and add to the depth of some of those youngsters they got, like Ben Keed and Jed Walter, Ethan Reid. Also very capable of pinch hitting in the ruck too. And John Noble and Rioli were the big ins for the Suns. Both requested the trade to the Suns. And when looking at the Suns' issues the past few seasons, especially this year too, Lachie Weller was a massive out for them with drive off half back. Will Powell had a great year, but they need really good quality rebound. And that's certainly what Noble, with his pace, and certainly Dan Rioli, can offer. Best and fairest winner for the Tigers this year. So yes, they did pay a pick 6 and also pick 23 to acquire Daniel Rioli, but they got a few picks in return to help with the bids. One of them is Leo Lombard, really high quality draft prospect in the Suns Academy. But it's exactly what the Suns need. He's in the middle of his prime, Rioli, so I think it is a great get. And out did go Jack Lukosius and Rory Atkins. They are across to Port Adelaide. But Lukosius, I'm pretty sure, was on a big contract, so that's a lot of money off the books. And with him out the door and also Rory Atkins, they traded their pick 13, 29 and also pick 50, and they've gotten 2 future first round picks in return, so they're going to be having so much leverage in next year's draft. So they paid up quite a bit to acquire some players, but getting rid of Lukosius and Atkins, they were able to trade really nicely and get 2 future firsts. So going to be giving the Suns a B grade here, I reckon. They've brought across exactly what they need. Good quality rebounding players, especially in Daniel Rioli, and also Noble, who can definitely play the part, and were able to do the pick swaps to be able to have the points to land Lombard, but also 2 future firsts next year. It's some good business from the Suns, a B grade. And now across to the Giants, and just like 2022, it's a bit of another mini mass exodus from GWS. Taranto and Hopper left in 2022, and now this year, Harry Perryman, Nick Haynes, Isaac Cumming and James Putting have all left. And geez, those are some big outs. These are quality best 22 players from GWS. They were key on making a push to last year's prelim final and at least towards a top 4 finish in 2024. So it is justified. There are questions on how the Giants can go next year with a lot of those core players leaving, but just like 2022, they've gotten plenty of good quality picks. I've got picks 15, 16 and 21, so definitely could bundle up those selections and move up the draft board. And acquiring Jake Stringer for only a pick in the 50s, not bad at all. A bit of a Stevie J type from a couple of years ago. Could he really bring some impact for the Giants in their forward half? It was a bit of Hogan or bust this year. They've got many good quality forwards, so the Giants, and Stringer could be another one to add into that dynamic forward half for GWS. So I've got to be giving the Giants a C grade here. It's a little bit out of their control with all these players leaving. That is an issue for some of those northern clubs, the player retention issues. But they gave, I'm pretty sure, good offers, especially to Peatling, but he just wanted to move. But bringing in Stringer for a cheap price, and I've gotten some good draft capital in return for leaving for those exiting players. Yeah, just a C grade here for the Giants. I thought it wasn't bad and could really nail this draft. Next team up, the Hawthorn Football Club. Plenty of hype on this side heading into next year, and it was another busy off-season, or trade period I should say, sorry, from the Hawks. They brought in Josh Battle and also Tom Barrass, so two key position players that will definitely bolster Hawthorn's back half. It could allow James Sicily to roam forward or centre a little bit more like he was able to in that semi-final late. Battle came across as a free agent, whilst Tom Barrass came across from the Eagles via a trade. The Hawks paid a future first, future second, and also a future third round selection to acquire him. He's starting to head into his 30s now, and look, it could perhaps be a ticking time bomb. It might be beneficial from the Eagles, given he's had a lot of surgeries the last couple of years. But geez, if this guy can stay on the park, he's one of the best intercept marking defenders in the competition. Can give rebound off his booming left foot too. But he just reads the ball so well, Barrass. And as for Battle, he's always been a very underrated player. Similar to Barrass, really strong in the air and accountable. And they are fantastic acquisitions for Hawthorn, no doubt. Some age and experience as well to add into the Hawthorn's back half. And it wasn't just the play movements, it was also plenty of pick swaps. They decided to trade out of this year's draft, giving away their pick 14, but they did get Carlton's future first and future second round selections. They've drafted well the last few seasons. They've got now a really solid young core, so it is somewhat understandable to trade out of this year's draft and load up on some picks for next year. So they still do have a first round pick from next year. They have Carlton's, whilst they traded away their own future first round selections to acquire Barrass. But some outstanding gets for Hawthorn, and geez, they're going to be an exciting team to watch next year with a much more stronger defence. It will feel like going to be giving them an A grade for their trade period. Some great business from the Hawks. Now we move across to the Melbourne Football Club. So much drama has shown on the Demons the last 12 months or so, but some pretty shrewd business from the D's the past 2 weeks or so. They brought across Tom Campbell and Harry Sharp. Max Gawn is going to get another year older next year. They haven't got the greatest ruck backup. When you look at the ruck stocks at Melbourne, when it goes past Max Gawn, they've got 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐿, Tom Fulham didn't play a game this year, and Faris White. Gawn's going to get another year older. Could start to become a little bit more injury prone. He was in and out of the team a little bit this year too, with a bit of hiccups. So Tom Campbell across from the Saints, it's his fourth or fifth club now, could definitely come in and make an impact if needed. And Harry Sharp is a good promising youngster for Brisbane. They're just such a talented team, the Lions. So with a new environment and more opportunity, Harry Sharp could try and push for a best 22 spot next year. But out does go Neil Bullen. That's a really big out. He's sort of that heart and soul type of player for the Melbourne Football Club, a key part in their premiership in 2021, but they were aggressive with their pick swaps. They decided to trade their future first round selection picks 28, 40, 46, 54 and 65 to the Dons to get a future third from the Bombers, but most importantly pick 9. So the Demons have got 2 top 10 picks. I like that from Melbourne. When you look at Melbourne's players that are aged under 21, 22, what players really shouted at you? I guess Van Rooyen, Judd McVie, Caleb Windsor was a very good draft selection as well last year too, but there's not really much that scream out at you in terms of superstar potential. So look, being aggressive, getting another top 10 selection from the Bombers could really make or break the Demons the next few seasons. If they can nail 2 top 10 draft picks, could really progress their list. So in my opinion, some good business here from the Demons. Gonna just be giving them a C grade though. Some understandable ends, ruck backup of Tom Campbell to go behind Gawn, and Harry Sharp could definitely get some better opportunity at the Demons. Neil Bullen goes, but they've decided to be aggressive here and get a top 10 pick. Now for the North Melbourne Football Club, and when you look at the recruits, the Kangaroos have done the last decade bust upon overpaid player. Is this finally the trade period where they've nailed it? They need good quality senior players. This is what isn't talked about, I feel like, enough when you look at the Kangas. Why have they finished in the bottom 4? Yes, they haven't got good talent across the park, but they're now starting to build and draft plenty of good quality young players. Their senior core of players are over 25-year-old players, just lets them down week upon week. Their leadership, they probably lack good enough leadership too, but what they've done this trade period, I thought, was perfect for what they need. Jack Darling might be past a little bit, but paid a pick in the 60s. Pretty shrewd business. He could come in, wax off nicely as a 1-2 punch alongside 𝐼𝐚𝐿𝐼𝐴. But the big two here are Caleb Daniel and especially Luke Parker. Yes, they paid pick 25 for Caleb Daniel, but when you think about it, he is an all-Australian caliber player. He's still under the age of 30, can definitely give more impact, and it is a player that sparks quality. He's a good quality kick of the football, can give some good rebound for the Kangas, and the big one here is definitely Luke Parker. He's 32 though next year, and he's starting to get past it a little bit. He slowed down a wee bit, I felt, this year for the Swans, but he's probably one more that is beneficial off the field. How about that? It is a perfect mentor for the likes of George Wardlaw to have Luke Parker, one of the toughest midfielders of the 2010s and beyond. Still got plenty to give, no doubt. Can definitely pinch it in the midfield, win clearance, and he gives X factor for the ball. He's so strong overhead, he can take some one-handers. He's a lovely kick for goal too. It's a great get for the Kangas, paying what was only a pick 62, and look at that. Alongside that, they also got 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝 was the stake knives in the deal, and he was hammered with injury a little bit at his time at the Swans. It was another failed first-round selection for Sydney, but this could be one that just slips under the radar, and he could finally get some good opportunity at a different club and could finally play his first AFL game. They need small forwards, the Kangas, so having a free hit on 𝐶onstantine isn't a bad move at all whatsoever. There's Braden George, Robert Hanson Jr., Blake Drew, so 𝐶onstantine will add towards those small forward brigade and yeah, try and push for his first AFL game. Going to be giving a B+ here for North Melbourne. This was some really good pickups. Could Caleb Daniel and Parker really shine brightly in the blue and white? And as for Jack Darling, don't know what I'm going to expect of him, to be honest. It feels like he probably could have retired a few years ago, but hey, he could offer some impact. But they need good quality senior players who will drive standards, who will drive leadership, especially off the field. And I think that's definitely what a few of those players can definitely bring for the Roos. So B+ for the Kangas. Now across to Alberton, the Port Adelaide Football Club, and yeah, wow, this was a bit of good and a bit of bad, but mostly the attention is shown on Dan Houston. They demanded 2 first-round selections for Dan Houston. What ended up happening? They didn't get 2 first-round selections for Dan Houston, but the players they were able to bring in are part of that 3-way deal with the Suns and the Pies. Out goes Dan Houston. They did get picks 13, 29, 36 and 50 from the Pies and the Suns, and also did get some players across. Jack 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐴 and also Joe Richards. Now, Joe Richards, I thought, had honestly some great flashes, showed some great glimpses for the Pies this year. Yes, he had a few games as the sub, but his first couple of games, he just showed that he is a really composed player and makes some great decisions. And Port Adelaide's forward half feels like that is a bit of a weakness for them. So a small forward to join the likes of Darcy Byrne-Jones and, of course, Willie Rioli. Yeah, I really like the look of Joe Richards. I think he could really flourish at a new home of Port Adelaide. And Jack 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐴 is an interesting one. Obviously a top talent for the Suns the past few years and a high draft pick, a big contract too. But you look at the key forwards, Charlie Dixon's retired, Ollie Lord just can't squeeze in there. Todd Marshall's had concussion problems, and Geordie Artis, I thought he had a very solid year, but coming off an ACL. So 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐴 adding to the ranks. And look, I think he's a bit of a bruise-free player. And Port Adelaide's issue with key forwards this year is they haven't been aggressive enough. I have that lingering thought 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐴 could be another one of those players, but let's hope it's not to be. He's a lovely kick for goal, and he's a smart player too as well. So I'm hoping he does go well for the pair, but geez, what they gave up for Dan Houston and what they did get, for giving up Dan Houston, I just still feels like it's not good enough. And they gave away their future first-round pick, let's remember. So they've given up their future first-round selection, and Dan Houston get 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐴, Joe Richards, and pick 13, 29. Just that's still unknown. We don't know how these players are going to go. And Rory Atkins, geez, there's going to be plenty of pissed off Port supporters. He's literally a former Adelaide player, and he's passed it a wee bit. I think he finished top 5 in the VFL best and fairest, but he's pushing 30 and he's just simply a role player. I don't know how he'll fit. Logan Evans is very good this year too, and Kane Farrell continues to build nicely, so I don't know if he gets a spot in there. To be fair, we'll see. Going to be giving Port Adelaide a D+ here. I thought it was a bit underwhelming what they did get in return for Dan Houston, and it's a bit unknown so far what 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿 and Joe Richards and Atkins can really bring. But I'm optimistic. I think at least one or two or even all of them could offer at least something quite beneficial. So, yeah, D+ though for Port Adelaide. Bit underwhelming what they did get in return for Dan Houston. And now for the Richmond Football Club, or should we call it Rebuild Football Club? A lot of players leaving the Tigers, but geez, do they have draft picks galore heading into this draft? Wonder what they'll do. Maybe they'll bundle up a few picks and trade out of this year's draft and get a few futures for next year. But they have got an abundance of picks with Graham, Bolton, Rioli and Baker leaving. They now have a draft hand of picks 1, 6, 10, 11, 18, 20, 23 and 24. Jack Graham left via free agency and they got a compensation of an end of second round pick. As expected, the Tigers got their 2 first rounders for Shea Bolton. Daniel Rioli, good misses for Richmond too. They had to pay up the Suns given he was a best and fairest and he is still contracted. So they got picks 6 and 23. Good business. And a pick 14 for Liam Baker, who is a bit of that heart and soul type of play for the Tigers. So he'll be dearly missed, but I thought really good, at least compensation return to get a pick 14 with him leaving. Going to be giving the Tigers here an A-. It's got to be in the A grade given what they have gotten in return for all these players, but I put in the minus on it just because we're heading into the unknown. They've got so many good quality draft picks, but could they nail this draft? Could they stuff it up? There's just a lot of unknown what's going to be happening in at least the next year or two for Richmond. So it was expected all these players were going to leave, and at least they got really good draft picks in return for those leaving players. So an A- for the Tigers. Across now to the St Kilda Saints, and it was at the start of the trade period. Some pretty big news with Josh Battle, top 3 in the best and fairest, leaving the club via free agency. It's a big out for the Saints, I feel. He was a very underrated and good quality player for the Saints for many years. Very good in the air too, so that's a big out. But they do get pick 8 in return with the compensation. With how much the Hawks are paying him, it did trigger band 1 in the compensation, so they do get a first rounder tied to their current first, so pick 8 they do get for Josh Battle. And it was some nice business bringing across Jack McRae from the Western Bulldogs. Giving up a pick 45 for a 3-time All-Australian midfielder isn't bad at all. Don't know what to expect though with how McRae will go on the field. I thought this year, to be fair, he just looks a lot slower and he's lost his ability to win the ball as cleanly as he was able to and get the hands out as cleanly as he was able to the past few seasons. So look, he'll definitely get a good run in the Saints midfield, get plenty of centre bounces. Could be used a lot better than what Bevo was using him, mostly as half forward the past few seasons. So under Ross Line, could flourish a lot more. Going to be giving the Saints here just a C grade. It was expected Josh Battle to leave, but they got the pick they wanted in pick 8, and Jack McRae picking him up for absolute peanuts could offer something nice for that Saints midfield. And a bit of experience too when you look at some of the youngsters the Saints have got. Paddy Dow and Liam Henry, Philippou. Some shrewd business from the Saints. A C grade it is. Across now to the Sydney Swans, and off the back of another grand final belting this year, and off the back of another quiet trade period. The stuff I'm accustomed to as a Sydney Swans supporter. Deary me. But anyways, it is understandable the Swans are going to have a quiet trade period. Let's be real here. They have one of the most talented lists in the competition. And you can definitely ask the questions of, well, who were they really going to bring in this trade period? But out does go Luke Parker, and this one hits hard as a Sydney supporter, no doubt. A player that I absolutely adored watching growing up. And it's sad to see him play his 300th game in another Guernsey. But it is what it is. That's how the footy world works. And it's beneficial for both parties, I feel, because Luke Parker will get more guaranteed years on his career joining North Melbourne, whilst he was out of contract if he was to stay at the Swans at the end of next year. Turning 33, who would know? He slowed down a little bit, pushed out of the midfield this year, and watching him this year felt like he lost a bit of his pace. But going across to the Kangas definitely will impact nicely on and off the field, no doubt. And as for Sydney, with Luke Parker out, it's one less selection dilemma, and it allows someone like a 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿 𝐿𝐼𝐿 or Taylor Adams or a Gus Sheldrick to try and push into that best 22. I feel like this is the move the Swans need to do if they do want to progress. And Jacob Costanti was the stake knives in that deal too, so for the Swans, another failed first round selection. The drafting the past few years has been a bit of a letdown, but they're always going to come into this year's draft looking like they're going to have a bit of leverage because they did get that end of first round pick from North Melbourne when they did trade away Dylan Stevens last year. So 19 and pick 22 could bundle up those picks and maybe perhaps move out of the draft or trade out. So going to be giving the Swans here a C-. It's definitely fair enough if you'd give the Swans a D grade or one of the worst performing teams in this trade period. But I say again, who were they really going to pick up? They made the grand final this year. They have one of the best lists in the competition, perhaps overrated a little bit, and you can nitpick and find deficiencies in the squad, like, oh, are their key forwards good enough? But who are they going to find this trade period? I feel like they've got to invest in the draft a little bit better. They've been unable to the past few years. And a big goal for their list this year, the Swans, was to retain those core players, like they're able to with Florent and Logan McDonald, Will Hayward, getting them on big deals. So that was probably more of an important factor. The cap space, apparently, well, as expected, tightening up a little bit with those big deals. So they couldn't really go out and acquire a bunch of players. So as expected, a quiet trade period from the Swans. Going to be giving them a C-. We now move across to the West Coast Eagles, and oh boy, this was certainly interesting looking at what they ended up doing, the Eagles. So they brought in Jack Graham, Liam Baker and 𝐼𝐿𝐴. So first off, Graham as a free agent, great pressure play for the Tigers and a premiership player, of course, as well. So we'll come in and add into the stocks in the forward half. Could he really bring something forward of the ball? Liam Baker and Matt 𝐼𝐿𝐴 as well were part of what could be a very infamous trade for the West Coast Eagles. So let's remember the Eagles finished in the bottom three. And when you finish the bottom three, you get a top 3 pick. So you can use that top 3 pick to draft a superstar or have the leverage to trade that out and get a lot in return. But they ended up trading at that pick 3, and what they got in return was Liam Baker, who is the heart and soul of the Tigers. I think he can come in and be a fine player, but trading out pick 3 to get Liam Baker, 𝐼𝐿𝐴, who is going to be the list anyway, he's the stake knives in that deal, and pick 12. They did get pick 14, but they traded that to get Liam Baker, whilst they could have accepted the first offer for Tom Barrass and trade that pick 14 they were going to get from Hawthorn and use that for Liam Baker. So they didn't really need to trade out pick 3 to get Liam Baker. Yeah, geez, it seems like a bit of a mess what the Eagles have done. That's just certainly how I reacted it, and that's certainly how many Eagles supporters reacted it as well. I know there's a lot of pissed off Eagles supporters on social media, and I know Jesse on his Eagles channel talked about it too in a bit of outrage. I just think, when I saw this on my phone, I'm like, wait, surely this is the typo. They have not traded out pick 3 for picks 12 and 14, and then they used 14 to get Baker. Yes, picks 12 and 14 does match the points, the draft index points for pick 3, but it's pick 3 in a big draft. You've got to pay a premium to get that. I thought the Eagles could have gotten maybe a future first or something a little bit more on top of that, but geez, they have finished in the bottom 3. They've brought in Liam Baker, 𝐼𝐿𝐴, and now hold pick 12. Beau Allen's probably one of the favourites to land at the Eagles, local WA boy, and looking at his draft profile, a lot of similarities to Elliot Yeo. So if they pick him up, he could definitely be the future. But they've so much pressures on that pick 12 now for the Eagles. They have really got to nail that, and they've got to have Baker come in and really, top 5 best and fairest. He's got to make an instant impact as well. So if the Blues pick up a superstar pick 3, this trade in a few years' time could end really badly. So they've got to nail it, but I still can't believe it. They've traded away pick 3 for as little as that. Could have gone a lot more. So, going to be giving the Eagles a D grade. There is, fair enough, a lot of Eagles supporters outraged. There are a few Eagles supporters that don't mind it. That's definitely fair enough, but I couldn't believe it when I first saw this trade on my phone. Giving up pick 3 for that. Deary man, out does go Jack Darling. To be honest, probably should have retired a few years ago. Definitely passed a wee bit, but could give some good off-the-field advice and mentorship for the youngsters at North. And Tom Barrass, look, they could have just ended up accepting the first deal, which was, I think, pick 14 and a little bit extra. And then they could have used that pick 14 to get Baker and hold pick 3. But at least they do get a future first, future second, and future third, all tied to the Hawks, though, for Tom Barrass. So if the Hawks go well, those selections could be pushed out quite a bit next year. So a D grade for the Eagles at the moment just seems very underwhelming, but who knows, in a few years' time, they could now pick 12 and Baker could become a star for the Eagles. The Western Bulldogs, the final club to discuss in this video today, and plenty of outs for the Doggies. Bailey Smith eventually did leave. They got pick 17 and 38, but they used pick 38 to bring across Matt Kennedy from the Blues. Jack Macrae did get traded out as well, and Caleb Daniel alongside that too. And they did get pick 25 for Callum Daniel, and when you look at it from the Dogs' point of view, he spent a lot of games as a sub this year, in and out of the team, couldn't really get a consistent spot in the 22, so they'll definitely take that, a pick 25 from North. A bit underwhelming from what they did get for Ballysmith though. They demanded, they wanted more, they rejected the first offer of pick 17, and they ended up accepting pick 17 in the end, but they did work the phones and get the three-way deal sorted with bringing across Matt Kennedy. So it's a bit of like a charms move last year, just another experienced midfielder adding into that Dogs list. How will he fare? Will he get a few games? Most likely, he's seeking opportunity for sure, and he's a good quality player, and he's versatile too. He can play like a key forward, he can play as a half forward, but also pinch hit through the middle. Going to be giving the Dogs a C- grade here. Would have gotten or hoped for a lot more for Ballysmith. They did get good value though for Caleb Daniel, and Matt Kennedy seems like a pretty average get. He could definitely make some impact for the Dogs, no doubt. So nothing really to shout about with the Dogs, so going to be a C- grade for them. So overall, there was me having a chat about every AFL team's trade haul from 2024 and giving each side a grade. As I said at the start of the video, the grades might not reflect well in a few years' time. We really don't know, but we can still react and reflect upon what it looks like at the moment. So yeah, it was good fun having a chat about each team. As always, this video is pretty lengthy, but I do like to go in depth and have a proper yarn about each side and what they did do. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Were you happy with how your team went? Were you not happy at all? Always love to hear your people's opinions down below in the comments. And that's pretty much it from me, everybody. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you did go in to enjoy. And until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.